Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Terry Martin. I'm joined once again with Jeff Berkowitz in Chicago. He with Public Affairs TV. And Jeff, this week we're going to be talking a little bit differently. We're going to be talking about public policy issues, but we're going to start off with, sadly, two men who have died recently. And the first one we're going to be talking about is former Governor Jim Edgar, who was the governor for 8 years. He was Secretary of State for 8 years before becoming governor. He was only 45 years old, I believe, when he became the governor in January of 1991. He died September 14th of cancer, and he was 79 years old. I'm going to show you a clip in a little bit, but before I do that, and I'll have more comments about the governor, Jeff, did you want to say anything as far as your recollections of the governor or impressions?
Well, I think, Terry, Governor Jim Edgar, who you and I knew, you knew better, but I knew him pretty well too. I covered him a lot, actually more after he was governor than during. But the thing that comes to mind about Jim Edgar, he was so charming. He was so suave, so polished. People have this image of downstate these days from Darren Bailey. You can like Darren, you cannot, but there's an image that Darren projects of downstate. Jim Edgar was not that. He projected an image of charming and thoughtful, and he was extremely popular from almost the beginning to when he left, from 1990, when he was elected in November of 1990, to when he left in January of
1999. He was reelected in 1994, and Jeff, he carried 101 out of 102 counties, which means the people of Illinois thought Jim Edgar had done a pretty good job in his first term. Mike Madigan said he nicknamed him Governor No, because when Jim Edgar came into office, the state was almost bankrupt. They were really short of money, a great financial crisis. Hang on. And when he left office after 8 years, he left the state a $2.5 billion surplus. So, yes, being Governor No, the first term paid off because he got the state back on track financially.
Look, two things. I think he beat the first female nominee for governor in the state of Illinois, Dawn Clark. And when he ran for re-election in 1994. And interesting, she was pushing a tax swap. We may or may not raise that later, but it was a big deal, and he was adamantly against it, and essentially he came out for it a year or two later. It didn't go anywhere, but that's kind of interesting. And the other thing is, he was extremely popular with conservatives. I always kind of wondered, how so? He was pro-choice, which wasn't very popular with conservative Republicans, but mainly at that time, and still is, a pro-life party. And so what was the conservatives like? I guess it was that he was known as Dr. No because he was viewed as a fiscal conservative. Now, whether he was, we'll let the historians decide, but he was viewed by conservatives as a fiscal conservative, and really that was enough for them, I think, and so, but it made him so popular that when he left in early 1999, and it had come up a few years later when Republicans were looking for somebody to represent them and run for the U.S. Senate, they wanted Jim Edgar. They wanted Jim Edgar, whatever the year was, 2002, 2004, whatever, It probably didn't stop.
He would have been a formidable candidate. I think he would have easily won a third term had he sought a third term for governor. But he decided not to do that. And he almost ran again for governor in 2006, and when Rod Blagojevich was going for re-election.
So you mentioned,
and I interviewed the governor on that. I don't have a clip from that. I'll show you a different clip. But he did. Okay. He said, I was in Colorado and I was being contacted. I thought about doing it. He goes, I thought I would be talked into running in 2006 again. He goes, but I was surprised when I talked to my friends when I got back to Illinois. They said, you've done your part. You don't have to take this on again. And he had already had a heart attack at one point when he was in office.
So a tease. That was then. That was the 1990s. Just so if folks stay with us through the end of the show, they'll hear a little bit about the current nominees or the current people competing to be the nominee of the Illinois GOP.
We'll talk about that, but I want to frame it with some of the issues, and we're going to get to that as well. Before, you were saying he was popular. Edgar was always proud of his hair, and I was going to say if I was doing a movie that needed to have a governor or president cast, I would have cast Jim Edgar. He was I think most people say, a pretty handsome guy for anyone who was in public office. Here he is when he was governor. He was considered to be a vice presidential running mate with Bob Dole for a while. He talked about that during our recent interview. And I asked him off the top if the governor was being asked or had a historian write a book about him in 50 years, what would he want the person to say? And in his answer here, just note that he shows just a little bit of his sense of humor when he talks on this. If in the future, if there was some historian writing a book on Jim Edgar, what would you want him to say about you that would be accurate and fair?
Oh, accurate and fair? I had it all planned out, but it made accurate. You kind of threw me off. I can't say wonderful. I would hope, and I think it's, I felt like he was a good governor. He tried to do his job and to provide services for the people. Wasn't always right. Things didn't always work out. But overall, I think I would hope they would say that, he did a good job. People felt good about state government while he was in leadership, and that, he did his best.
If you want, folks, you can go to the Illinois Channel on YouTube. It's YouTube/IllinoisChannelTV, and see that's a 2-hour interview. That was just the very beginning of it. And I showed you those photos in part because, as you could see, the governor was having cancer treatments and lost his full head of hair that he had always loved having. But he said he had gotten used to losing it, and he also said, much, I think you may have heard that then, that he goes, I get ready a lot faster now. But Jeff, what are your final thoughts before we move on?
Well, as people saw in the clip, when he was asked what would be accurate about him, he said it'd be accurate and fair to say he tried to provide services to people and he did a good job. And what history will look at, I'll just touch on, did he do a good job? History will ask, some people have said he was the education governor, because he spent quite a bit. Did he get results? Did some of the problems we still have with our schools around the state of Illinois, 40% at best reading at grade level, was that happening in the 90s? Did you do anything? And then, of course, the pension issue known as the pension ramp. That's what historians will dissect. We don't have to do it on the show today. This is a show that honors certainly his style and his intent, and he's a good guy.
The other thing I would say just before we close is that he was still a relatively young man. I think he was early 50s when he left the governorship. So he took a job with the University of Illinois and continued to talk on issues and educate people. He was serving on the Illinois Channel board when we started off, and he started the Edgar Fellows, which continues on. I know he is very proud of that, where he brings people in public service together from both sides of the aisle, and they spend like a week kind of comparing notes and hearing some lectures and things, maybe hearing parts of government that operate outside their area of expertise. So that's something that he was proud of. But with that, I'll close out. Let's move on to some of the other major stories. And sadly, Jeff, last week when you and I were taping our show, it was the very time out in Utah that Charlie Kirk was being assassinated while he was on a campus talking to young people, as he does for his Turning Point USA. Charlie Kirk started Turning Point when he was just 18 years of age. He was well read. He had written a number of books, and his whole argument, ironically, was that we should be talking to each other and work out our differences. I'm not going to always convince his idea. You know, you're not always going to convince someone else, but you can at least listen to them and share ideas. And he said, when you quit talking, violence starts. So I say, ironically, that here he was in the very act of trying to do one of his college presentations where he has students come up and talk in microphones, and he responds to what they say when he was shot down by an assassin.
Well, Terry, the thing about Charlie Kirk, his death and the shooting and the lead up to it, the run up to it, and the post, that has become a symbol for the divide in this country. And it's a symbol of what's ailing the Democratic Party more than the Republican Party. Because what's ailing the Democratic Party, oddly enough, since Trump is accused of being a hater, they have tremendous hate. Some people call it Trump derangement syndrome. Now, as you people know, I have my own criticisms of Donald Trump and his style, his personality, but I think journalists should make a strong effort on both sides to always give politicians, Republicans and Democrats, a fair hearing. Trump is not getting, and has not been getting, and Charlie Kirk did not get a fair hearing. And so much of that got so out of hand that in our midst, a guy who was, how old is he? 20 years old?
31.
And you,
31 when he died.
The shooter.
22 years old.
22-year-old guy had a tremendous amount of hate, and it was misreported by the media. The first thing the mainstream media did was within a day or two, and Kimmel did this, and he's going to pay for that.
The Jimmy Kimmel show has been paused, probably never to come back.
Because here, and I saw Wolf Blitzer try to defend this. You got to watch that, folks. Find it.
You're saying he tried to defend Kimmel?
Saying, yeah, it wasn't so bad. It wasn't so bad. That was the best. And so, you know, when Kimmel went after Trump because of something he said a day or two after, showing he wasn't mourning, he said it was like a child mourning a goldfish. It was so despicable. It was not comedy. And then they said, well, he wasn't really a commentator. Well, was that comedy? Look, if you want to be a comedian and you want to have satire, that's fine. But Kimmel had long ago left being a comedian, and somehow ABC did not wake up to this. Okay, finally they did. I mean, and the things that were said about Charlie Kirk. Okay, he was this and he was that and he was terrible. And many people, large number of folks, especially young people, I don't know, the number was like in the Democratic Party. Pew had something like this. I may be getting this off a little bit. Something like 50% almost said partially, it would be almost partially acceptable if he was killed. If he was killed. This is now the Democratic Party, folks. I didn't do the poll.
It's really despicable, some of the ways so many people have acted. And, you know, it's not just Jimmy Kimmel. There was just an article in the Springfield paper that someone within city government lost their job for what they were saying about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. There have been other people, around the country for the same reason. You know, they've spoken up and lost their job for basically applauding his killing. It's just shameful.
Terry, you know what it reminds me of? Jim Ryan running against Rod Blagojevich in 2002. I was at this debate at WTTW, and Rod said one of his outrageous things. And Jimmy and Jim Ryan, a really decent person, you can agree or disagree with him, just turned to him because his family was there, his wife was there, and he said, "Have you no shame?" Well, I say to Jimmy Kimmel, have you no shame? You can criticize Trump all you want. You and others can criticize Charlie Kirk all you want. But for gosh sakes, he wasn't even in the ground, and you had people trying to justify his murder. I would never try to justify, no matter how much I disagreed with any Democrat, if I did, I would never try to justify his murder.
No, I mean, if you're at that point in life, you need to check yourself and check your humanity. This is no longer about legitimate political differences. It's sick. 31 years old he was, Charlie Kirk, well-read, became friends with the President of the United States, the Vice President of the United States. The Vice President, Vance, just said the other day, I probably wouldn't have been on the ticket if it hadn't been Charlie Kirk telling Donald Trump that he was the guy that he should pick. Both the President and Vice President will be attending his memorial service tomorrow, I believe. That's going to be happening out west, out in Arizona. And by the way, his wife Erica, who gave a phenomenal talk in her grief after his assassination. She has been named by the board of Turning Point, that she'll be the CEO, and she promised she would not let Turning Point die, which now has over 54,000 chapters in high schools and colleges across the nation.
So it's only a report, but the investigation of the killer looked at his texts, and his text said basically, I'm sorry, this was to his lover. This was a male talking to his lover who was a male transitioning to be a woman. And he said, somebody tried to say, oh, this was just a romantic issue. No, he said to his lover, I'm sorry about this, but he deserved this. He was a hater. And at some point, you can't just deal with hate by negotiation. Implicitly, you have to kill the guy. That is the Democratic Party. When they want to say, oh, no, it's not the Democratic Party, then they ought to be condemning that yesterday and today and tomorrow. And I don't hear it. I don't hear it. And they want Republicans to condemn things that are wrong, and they're right to want that. But it's a two-way street. We need to have politicians in both parties who are decent and respectable. And when they're not, the media need to call them out.
You know, Jeff, just this afternoon, we're taping this on September 18th on Thursday. Again, I believe the memorial service for Charlie Kirk is on Friday, I believe. But just this afternoon, Britt Hume, who's always been, I think, one of the more insightful commentators. He was an ABC White House correspondent for years. He's been with Fox News now for, I believe, about 20 years. He was talking about this issue and the violent rhetoric in the wake of the assassination. He spoke this afternoon with, on Fox News, and let's take a listen.
And I would mark this, the attack on the murder of Charlie Kirk, as Trump derangement syndrome affecting these young people in Utah who either were involved in this, as the killer obviously or apparently was, and those who may have known about it as affected by that. And I think that the people on the left, of whom there are far too many, who have attacked him the way they have in the aftermath of his death, have made in political terms a terrible mistake. This is revolting to people to hear this and see this stuff. And I think it reflects badly on them, of course, but it also reflects badly on the party that represents them, and that would be the Democratic Party.
So, Jeff, Britt Hume says the Democrats could really pay for that. And ironically, when we get to the midterm elections for Congress, we will have to see to what extent does this assassination and the way this has been handled by people like Jimmy Kimmel and some others, we'll have to see if that still lingers and has an impact on the midterm elections.
Well, I would just say, as we transition to our third topic, which is the Illinois GOP Gov primary, that this issue we're talking about, we're going to test, and tests may come up sooner than you think, because there are basically, well, there are four candidates, but there really are two. I'll go through that quickly. So we'll start at the top and work our way down.
Of what?
Okay. Of the four GOP Gov candidates in the Illinois GOP primary for governor, four candidates. There are only really two. I'll explain that in a second. In my opinion, but we'll cover at least three or four. And starting at the top, there's the most recent entry to that race, which is Ted Dabrowski, with his running mate, Dr. Carrie Mendoza. We'll come back to them in a second. So that ticket is formed. That light Gov candidate ticket is formed. That's one ticket. And this is news because we're taping this on September 18th, and I was speaking to the light gov candidate of the second ticket we'll mention, which was Aaron Delmar, who's now teaming up Darren Bailey, and Aaron Delmar was in Hong Kong, but I was doing an interview. We'll come back to that quickly with Aaron Delmar. I tried to get to Bailey, couldn't.
And who is Aaron Delmar?
So that ticket. Aaron Delmar, Cook County GOP chairman, circa 2012, recently, and now Cook County GOP chairman. He's about 45. He's a business guy. He said he was in Hong Kong. He's reported to have said, I didn't ask him about this, pursuing a business venture. He deals a lot, his business is arcade rentals. I think it deals mostly with setting up sporting and other events. And then, of course, he's teaming up with Darren Bailey, who people know because he ran in 2022 for governor.
Let's run through who the candidates are, and then we can go back and fill in a bit, because people are going to
So
lose
we've got
track.
those two tickets. We've got those two tickets. Let's go to the third, and that's James Mendrick, who's a sheriff from DuPage. He's got a running mate, Renteria, something like that. We won't go into that.
Let me
He's
just a
not
second,
well
I'll
known.
pop in just so people can see. This is James Mendrick, the sheriff of DuPage County, as you just mentioned.
And then we got Max Solomon. He's got a running mate. Max only got about 1% last time. Might do not much better. So Max, he's a nice guy. He's a smart guy, but I don't think he's going to have money or organization. And I don't think the sheriff's going to have much money. He started about 6 months ago with about 70,000 in his kitty, and he has now 100,000. To give you an idea, Dabrowski started about a week ago, and he's got in the last week or two $1.3 million.
Let me bring
You
up
need that
that
kind of
photo
money.
of Ted there, just so people can get an idea of what Ted looks
And
like.
better for him, he's got message because he's been working on these issues. He doesn't need a counselor, an advisor. Ted knows the issues of the state of Illinois backwards.
And for those who
forwards,
don't know, who is Ted Dabrowski?
He's president of WirePoints for the last 7 years, which deals with dissecting the issues of public policy that Illinois is facing, and more importantly, coming up with solutions. And the 7 years before, same thing, but for Illinois Policy Institute. And before that, Citibank, he was a banker. He was involved in Poland and helping Poland come into the modern world with an economic revolution as they got from out behind the Iron Curtain and into freedom and a free market and so forth.
And who else? What other? Is that the end of the candidates?
Well, just say his running mate is Dr. Carrie Mendoza. She's an ER.
Ted's running mate.
Ted's running mate is Dr. Carrie Mendoza. She is a accomplished person as an ER doctor, and that's her main thing. But she's also been involved in public policy, and I think she'll be talking about the same issues.
I take it she's a Hispanic, or did she marry a Hispanic?
I know who her husband is, because I know her husband is Miles Mendoza, and I know him, and so that name Mendoza comes from her husband. Whether she is or not, I don't know. But frankly, I think we spend too much time on pigmentation.
I agree.
And on other stuff.
I think we ought to just go by resumes rather than gender or
more
color.
More important than resumes, what are their positions on the issues,
Right.
and how would they fix the problems
Right.
of the state? And I think I know Ted Dabrowski, and I know a bit Carrie Mendoza. They can speak well. We know something about Bailey. People can talk to that. And we know something, or will know, about Aaron Delmar. And because of my view, let me just finish one thing.
Go ahead.
My view, the most important thing when you're running for politics is what I call MOM. M is for message, O is for organization, and M is for money. You can't be a serious, credible candidate unless you have a strong message, strong organization, and enough money to build those things and get them out. Ted's shown he's going to have a lot more than the 1.3 million he has. Bailey, he had a lot of money last time, but I don't know where he's getting it this time, not from the same places. And it looks like the sheriff can't get it. So that's why I say this race in the GOP primary for governor will be between Darren Bailey and Ted Dabrowski. We'll see. But that's my prediction. And it's 6 months away.
Are there any other rumors that you've heard of other candidates jumping in the race?
No, but let me just say, I didn't mention that Bailey and Aaron Del Mar have not announced, but here's the news. I was speaking to Aaron Del Mar. He told me they will announce on September 25, a week from tomorrow. Okay, and here's another bit
And
of news.
where will
On
that be?
September-
Do we know?
I don't know. It doesn't matter. They're announcing. Okay.
For those who
What does
forget,
matter
this is Darren Bailey, just in case. Who was?
But here's another little bit of news, break news on the show. September 27th, an event is being put together. I know the people putting them together, and there may be 400 or 500 people. There may be 1,000. We'll see. That's in Yorkville, which is part of Kendall County, so it's a Kendall County event. I'm predicting Ted Dabrowski will be there. It'll be 10 a.m. in the morning. I'm blanking on the name of the park in Yorkville, but starts 10 a.m., goes to 11 a.m. or so. And I'm predicting Darren Bailey will be there, Ted Dabrowski will be there, and they'll be talking, and we'll be finding out. This is the intersection between people paying tribute and respecting the memory of Charlie Kirk, and also getting into what do the two leading candidates now for governor, the Illinois GOP, have to say about that and the issues, and we'll find out September 27. You heard it here, Public Affairs, Jeff Berkowitz and Terry Martin.
Yeah, Jeff, it's interesting, both in the congressional races I alluded to before and the governor's race, the issue of violence, as we just witnessed here with the assassination of Charlie Kirk, but it's also, what else are we talking about? The whole thing about Governor Pritzker and other Democrats in the state saying to the President of the United States, don't bring in, have the National Guard. And this issue of violence, law and order, I think is going to be very key. I didn't have time to get the taping, but Mayor Johnson of Chicago was just saying today, we got this under control, and he was alluding to earlier years, some going back to 74, when there were like 900 people being killed in Chicago in one year, and he's trying to, say that he's really brought it down, where this year we're going to have only like 500. But you look at what's been accomplished in Washington, D.C. There was a hearing on Capitol Hill today where the mayor of Washington, D.C., they were saying how the crime under what Trump did to help local authorities has dramatically reduced crime. And I think the governor, just as Britt Hume said about some of the things said about Charlie Kirk, I think the governor and some of the other Democrats who stood up and said, no, Trump, because they're always anti-Trump, I think they're going to maybe face paying it for this politically. When they see how much what Trump could do, and they're rejecting the help.
Here's the key takeaway. I predict federal races in Illinois, statewide races in Illinois. The common issues are going to be federal, state, taxes, schools, bad performance on schools, high taxes, those two, crime, it's down, but it's still a problem across the state of Illinois. Illegal immigration, how is that working out? What it cost are the
cost of
legal
taxpayers
immigrants.
for all that.
Yeah, and how much more is being given to illegal immigrants as opposed to citizens who are
And the
illegal?
sanctuary state thing about not working with the federal authorities, not working with ICE.
All a part of the illegal immigration. Those four issues joined by economic climate and jobs of Illinois. Only 15,000 new jobs under Governor Pritzker. Texas, Florida, over 1 million, million and a half. 800,000 to 15,000.
There are plenty of issues.
Last, Terry,
Make it quick.
big issue, pensions. $250 billion in unfunded pensions. Every candidate for governor, and more importantly, J.B. Pritzker, that's his record. He's got problems in all of these issues, not for not fixing it. Come on, we'll give him a fair shake. What did he even
There's
try to do?
plenty of issues here, and we're going to be hearing more about them. We're going to cover them as we go along. But our sympathies to Governor Edgar's family, and obviously to those who were friends of Charlie Kirk, who actually was raised in Illinois. So he was a native of Illinois to begin with. And also I want to say sympathies to the family of Porter McNeil, board chairman out in Quincy, a great guy who passed away also this week. Jeff, we're going to say goodbye. Until next time, folks, thanks for watching.